a look. It seems that it would be... Oh, shit. I someone at the door. Give me a sec. Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini. This week, a conversation show pulling the threads of Season 4 together, trying to make sense of some of the themes, and we'll end the season with some questions from our listeners. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van der Giessen.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
All right, so the beginning of the end of Season 4. Marcel, give us Season 4 in numbers.
It was a long season, so started in September until now, end of July. And in total, we recorded 59 podcasts. So every week we have a podcast. And then you think, 59? There are only 52 weeks in a year. But we also did a lot of live podcasts. So Microsoft Ignite, 6 podcasts. AWS in Las Vegas, also 6. Google Cloud, a couple of months ago, 8 podcasts. And also MWC in Barcelona with 6 podcasts. So in total, almost 60 podcasts recorded. So yeah.
So if you include this one, how many is it?
Yeah, it's 60. Round number. Let's round it up to 60.
Oh, I mean, that could have gone so differently, couldn't it?
Well, it could have been professional and by the numbers and showing us as an outfit that knows what they're talking about. But no, we had to do it our way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, why would we start on a professional tip? We've never done that before, have we? We actually made the effort to get some information together for this as well.
What I love about that execution was we prepared the data. We had a conversation, validate the data. We found some errors in the data and we updated the data. And still, when we come to it, we get it wrong.
No, 59 or 60. It's. I like round numbers.
Just make sure you're never a judge, Marcel, because that type of ruling, 25 years, 10 years.
Well, also, I'm not sure that we did 60 full shows because the Microsoft Ignite in AWS, we did day 1, 2, and 3, right? So we did multiple different interviews and recordings, but they all went into 3 shows. So did you account for the 3 shows or did you account for the number of interviews?
So in a total of publications, it's 59, but indeed, Ignite and AWS, day 1 to 3 with multiple episodes. So it's always sort of nice calculation.
Well, I think we've got that off on a clear first foot, don't you?
You know how we normally open the podcast with the confused section? Yeah. We're not doing it on this episode. I think we've just naturally created one in the live, exposed ourselves as rather poor at managing what could be considered core data.
Well, everybody can see now why we've made confusion a feature of the show, can't they?
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Right. So we are at the end of Season 4, and we're going to take a look back across the season and just pick out the things that sort of bubbled to the top, either for us or what was obvious in the guests that were coming through the show, the things that were in their minds, what was resonating with them, and sort of therefore, when you look back across the year, what are the big prevalent themes that have come out? And I think scaling AI seems to be the one that we probably should start with. It has been in most, if not all, of our conversations this year in one way or another. At all of the Hyperscaler conferences, obviously the messaging coming out of those conversations was around not just AI as proof of concept, but AI scaling out to materially impact organizations or processes. The rise of agentic AI this year has been sort of in the middle of all of that, which is therefore starting to build out some form of scaling framework alongside Gen AI at the front end and agentic that's allowing processes in the middle to start to scale out, as well as tool sets like Foundry and more emerging trusted data sets. It appears that there are a lot of tools now that can be used for more and more broader tasks. However, amongst all of that excitement at the front end of that journey, organizations are still lagging that. And I think I might make an argument here for the adoption lag actually maybe slightly increasing over the course of the year as the complexity and scale of some of the tooling that's come out increases. I think people are trying to break out of proof of concept mindset, trying to push into what it might mean for their organization to go further, and also perhaps even more existentially, what it means for organizations to exist in the intelligence age. Ez, what in all of those conversations this year has stood out for you?
Well, I think we talk about tech a lot, obviously. That's all that we do. But in the end, it really is about the human connection, whether it's in ecosystems collaborating together, whether the tech is really helping, if it's including people across the world. I think we've already touched upon that as well during the show, that we're not always aware that not everyone is able to use internet or tech, or due to cultural reasons or political reasons or a lot of other reasons, they're not using it the way that it might be intended by the makers. So it's way more nuanced, I think, than just a release of, oh my God, this is really high speed tech with quantum, with, mind blowing. But in the end, it's us humans that give meaning. So I think that's what's resonating for me the most. Yeah.
Well, we'll certainly, I think we'll unpack the human perspective as a main topic in a second, because I think you're right. It is not as high up in the conversation as it perhaps should be some of the time, I think. Roberto, what are you seeing in terms of the scaling of AI?
I agree with you that the lag is taking longer, or it's a longer tail than I would have hoped of. I think one of the problems, though, that is arising, and we did this when we spoke to the head of AI at Google at the conference this year, that he actually said he struggles to keep up with AI developments and he's responsible for delivering them, which I found great. It was like the man responsible for delivering this to the world also struggles.
Not only delivering, by the way, setting the pace in a lot of ways.
And the standard, yeah. But the point is, I think he's going, take his division as an example. They're going so fast that if you're an organization, you try and adopt one style of the technology, and then there's been two variants of that before you've even got it near to production. So I actually think that we need the development life cycle of those creating AI capability to settle a bit before the organizations will be able or stand a chance to catch up and use it as it's intended. If you look at where AI was when we did that conference, things like multimodal was coming online, but now look at the AI videos that are being created that didn't exist even 6 months ago. They're all over social media. Yeah, it's like this rate of advancement is incredible, and I think because of that, the big machinery of corporate is struggling, and I think that's causing that extended adoption lag.
I think that's right. It's both hard to work out how you apply this stuff, and then it's also legitimately hard to work out how you scale this stuff.
You could stand up a team, right? And then they go and invest in a technology. And then 3 months later, it's not obsolete, but it's now, version -2. And you're like, well, you should be on that one now. And you go, oh, hang on a minute.
But I think we've been challenged as well. If you look at Anders Inset and also Karel van der Poel, they both said, this might be a very outdated mindset that we're using still.
Yeah.
That it's far way more out there than we can even imagine. So we're trying to grasp it still with our outdated mindset.
So maybe that's it, right? Traditional thinking needs to be chucked out, and we end up with some different AI thinking, new age, new thinking, new strategy. And maybe the tenets of like the way we think about architecture, service delivery, security, that just needs to be rebooted. Maybe that's where we're heading.
I think there may be some grains of truth in that. In the sense of certainly sort of traditional organizational structures are going to radically change. Let's say we get to a point where it's like we consider these organizations to be human AI hybrid organizations. That's really new. We're going to have to think about what the consequences and difficulties of that sort of thinking is going to be. And on top of all of that complexity, maybe the most technological complexity that we've seen in terms of trying to integrate it into our lives, organizations, and society, humans have not been that great, let's face it, at implementing some previous technologies. So I wonder whether it's going to be AI installing and deploying AI that might actually up the ante here.
So I had a conversation with a prominent analyst on operating models recently, and we got onto a conversation.
A prominent analyst. Did you ever see that?
Yeah. But David. But the conversation we got onto was what is the role of humanity in computing? And it was, we've got very used to codifying architectures that deploy and we control. But actually, if you take the agentic, the intra and interconnected agentic, and you step back, you might get to a position where you codify the whole organization. It deploys itself, it self-governs, it self-organizes. You watch it and you tweak it and you change it and you might redeploy it. But essentially, you elevate yourself out of the weeds of the day-to-day where humans do it, and now you could define the whole organization, and AI then goes, deploys it and creates it. So you have is your organization alive? That phrase you used, David, is, it's an AI whole edge-to-edge org, and you just configure the parameters that you want that organization to behave to.
Not absolutely. And that might reconfigure, every quarter, depending on what it's needing to do. And the other aspect of this that I think was major this year with scaling was an agent-to-agent protocol.
No.
So, that's interesting when you think
that's one of the enablers.
And that's within your own organization. But then, of course, that's going to be business to business.
Yeah.
Potentially nation state to nation state agent interaction.
So you get this whole concept of, I define an entity and I want to achieve a macro outcome. And then you just let it go. And as you see it go, you operate the machinery, but it's on such a vast scale. You're talking about whole domains. And I think the first organization that works out how to deploy that, like the replacement of the ERP concept with this type of concept, will suddenly win. So you can codify a style of org that you want, and then it just goes and implements it for you.
Well, and if you look at scaling AI from an adoption point of view, like this week, I've been seeing so many AI literacy training for a lot of employees, and they're all interested. They're all eager to learn and to understand how it can help them in their regular job. So that I think is also something new, because a lot of people already see that there is value, in using that new tech, and that hasn't been the case for years. I think then you need to push tech, and that it can help you. And now you even see employees, that do operational jobs asking for help and can I use it, and can I get a license, and why are we not allowed yet? So that's a different pool, I think, now.
So I think there's quite a lot in that. So obviously the tech industry over the course of the next year and on is not going to stop pushing in terms of the rate of technology innovation. And I think closing down the adoption lag in your own organization and thinking about what it means for your organization and how you scale it is going to be something that we're all challenged with. And as we were saying there, that could be something that's so radically different. I think we should be open to something that's so radically different to the way we've traditionally architected and designed and delivered technology, that it might look nothing like what we're used to, which is both exciting and somewhat unnerving. And of course, within that sort of perhaps bridges me onto themes 2 and 3, which are somewhat interconnected, but we'll take them one at a time. The first one is, in this world, what do we have to think about from an ethical perspective? Robert, why don't you unpack that for us in just 2 seconds, and then we're going to come on specifically to the human perspective and the human in the loop. But let's start with ethics.
Yeah, of course. We are entering a new age, and with that, the way we compute answers can be different. So we used to be very deterministic, and now we're entering into a world where we've just said we might configure whole parts of organizations to be do stuff. So we're turning over more control to the machine. And through that machine will then be empowered to make decisions. And we must remember when we do that we have to be ethical about how we make those decisions, that we can trace those decisions effectively, and that we don't disadvantage a part of our society based on a machine doing something that we didn't want it to do. So the new role, we've saw the prompt engineer rise a new role, but the AI ethicist is another role that's popped up that says, as we enter into this tech age and we run really fast towards it, somebody's always there saying, should we? Is that the right thing to do? Are we going to disadvantage? Are we still being humans by just using technology in this way?
I recognize the role of the AI ethicist that you talk about, and we've had a number of interactions with people who are taking on that emerging role. Do you think that is just early implementation curve heebie-jeebies, and therefore we're putting in these roles because it feels like we should have them. We've all read, certain sci-fi that suggests to us, oh God, we've got to be a bit careful with this. So do you think that's where we are? Or do you think that legitimately the change is so big that we have to redo ethical frameworks?
So I think we need to put a lot of energy into the system now to make sure we remain an ethical and moral society. And that might become par for the course and we build it in and it's easy and it rolls. But we should never turn our back on judging if the system is right and is treating a human correctly. And it's very easy to become complacent to that. And we've seen that in certain systems, even with IT and things like healthcare, where claim decisions go the wrong way. And even though morally they should have gone the other way, they haven't, etc. So I think actually, if you look at past performance of implementation of technology that can affect a human, we've not been great. So I feel that the role probably has a high importance in the future, especially with turfing over more controlled technology.
But is it that role, or is it roles and responsibilities in general? Because who's accountable when AI disrupts something in a certain process or program? It's not going to be an ethicist that's going to be accountable.
So this is the health and safety officer conundrum that we have, which is the health and safety officer sits in an organization, is completely independent and audits everything we're doing. The person implementing the technology is responsible, but a health and safety officer can call it out and they can't be touched. And it's the same role for the ethicist, I feel, which is they'll just be a role in society that are there to watch what's going on and are independent of the corporate structure. The corporate structure itself, or whichever organization is doing it, they're responsible, right? You implemented it, it did something bad. More fool you, you need to deal with the consequences, whether that be a hefty fine or even jail time. So we can never discharge responsibility just because we said it was automated. How we delineate that through, if we get to the world of defining whole organizations, I don't know. It's something we'll have to tackle, but there still has to be somebody accountable. And I think that having that uncomfortable position in an organization sharpens the mind about doing the right thing. Sometimes you could argue that incentivization goes too much in the wrong direction, and we need to make sure we have that check and balance.
And the role for large-scale governance around this, do you think? So whether it's nation-state rules or whether it's, kind of macro nation-state like the EU, what role in all of this for them then? So, do you see the ethicists merely drawing down from their framework and thinking and then implementing that locally?
It would be nice to think that nation-states get together. I know UN, etc. We spoke to the advisor around the UN and the Pope around AI and ethics, etc. That they set the rules that then the AI ethicists watch and discharge through the org. I think in the interim where legislation lags technology adoption, we're going to have to rely on local or global type approaches to this whilst we get a grip. Legislation is so far behind and takes years to catch up that the mistake will have happened long before it ever becomes a legal control or a regulation control.
So let's at that point let's bridge into the human perspective, Esmee, and the importance of the human in all of this as the world evolves in the way that we've set out there. Start us off. What are your first thoughts on this, and what resonated with you?
Well, for me, I think season 4 actually had a soul. It was quite human.
Like that. Very good.
And I think we came across...
Unlike seasons 1 to 3, Rob.
I'm not saying anything about
that's a heavy implication right there.
I think she threw shade at you. I don't know why. I don't know why I think it was you. Yeah, I think so. I think it was... Wasn't it Marcel? I reckon it was Rob, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. Did Rob, she look? Is that thing that that uncomfortable look in my direction?
Shot you a little glance as she said it. Anyway, sorry, let's go on. I think you're right, by the way.
No, I think across all the episodes, whether we were diving into AI governance or ERP transformation, sustainability, product engineering, that powerful question kept on, echoing beneath the surface. What does it mean to stay human in systems designed to scale beyond us? If we lose control, sort of say, where does that leave us? And I think one of the key, or at least for me, thought-provoking people was Jitske Kramer this season. And she also said in this digital world, we don't need more AI ethics panels. We need more human rituals inside digital design. So where's the human? Where's the culture? Where are all those human aspects? And those are, years, and those are ancient old rituals that we're talking about that we've somehow lost along the way, I might say. And I think we also saw the same with Defra, who was talking about, it's about showing care, not code. If you want to have long-term impact with teams. Twinings, when we were talking about T, that was also about change-ready cultures, people adopting and feeling safe to learn and adapt and lead. And one of the previous episodes that we just had with Tim Elliott also was talking about, composable business isn't just a technical concept. It's that call to reimagine how humans can collaborate and live across fractured systems. So that's, it's setting so much upside down. But I think the most important topic has been trust, digital trust, human trust. Are we trusting agents? Are we trusting other companies?
Is this what people are referring to when they say human in the loop, do you think?
Well, maybe in terms of control and making sure. I think that's the same with the AI ethicist. I hate that word.
It's hard to say. I fell over that one earlier too.
Yeah, the one that Rob just mentioned.
There's a conflict there, though, isn't there? Right, to the AI scaling, and I think this is the issue that we'll have is if we talk about configuring entities on a much larger scale, like whole organizations with a parameter, that whole human in the loop thing. It's gone for quite large scale things. And then
you read my mind.
And then what do we do? So do we then put automated ethicists inside? See, I said it correctly there, ethicists. Do we stick those as check and balance agents inside? Is there an AI watching the AI? Where do we go? It gets very complicated. And if there's corruption, how do we deal with it, right? So I think there's a real issue here with how do we keep the human in the system, but we scale wider for the efficiency and the productivity we seek.
Yeah, this wasn't on the pod, it was a separate thing I was at, but it was one of those panel pieces, and the question was, do we think we'll ever let AIs make mission-critical decisions? And it was pushing it human in the loop. And it already is the answer to that question.
No, it is. And if you look at defense, they're talking about automating huge parts of the defense battlefield and the way drone technology works. And the problem is they're in a literal arms race, right? So if they don't, we know the people who may want to harm us will. So we have to, and it's like you're caught in the cogs that drive it forward, and so it will happen.
Yeah, that's right. And less dramatically, perhaps, it already happens on things like aircraft. Where aircraft are making decisions the whole time. There are robotic surgeons and things like that. So that yes, there's some human decision making in place, and the ethical question that was thrown at the group was, if you had somebody who was coming in who was having a heart attack, and the heart doctor or whatever wasn't available, but the heart AI was, would you let the heart AI treat that human? And of course, the answer is yes, right? I mean, under what circumstances would you say no? So it's almost like the cat's fully out the bag.
Well, so I'll going back to the early space shuttle days. The space shuttle control system used to have 7 independent computers, and because of the way it worked and the way it received telemetry, there was a chance that the computers might make the wrong decision. So what they did was they put 7 in, not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. They put 7 in, and what happened is if 4 of them made one decision and 3 made a different decision, the 4 outvoted the 3 and disabled them, and then those 4 were left. And then they would continue on this voting. So they always voted for the answer. So the way they did automated check and balancing was they put different engines in, and then if one started giving spurious answers, it got kicked out. And so they developed a system in the very early days of handing over control because the human couldn't cope with the speed of what was going on, so the computer could actually self-regulate. Maybe those types of strategies will start to become more prevalent in the way we operate as well, where we have different systems deployed, and then it's the outcome, and they vote out if there's an issue, etc.
I think that's the second time we've touched on for want of a better term, the network effect of AI. Is like what happens when they are making decisions, even way before the singularity, but just making decisions based on rule sets that they've got today. And then they create a series of interactions that might create a different set of conditions. Yeah. So I do think that kind of multiplier effect is something we're not really yet talking about, but actually could be the thing that drives scale and sort of next level in inverted commas, intelligence from the current set of technology.
So I'm curious. So
Hang
humans
on,
and
the voice from
agents
above.
and the voice from above.
Who's that?
And the voice from above.
Yeah.
Is it our overlord?
Yeah.
He suddenly decided to turn up, pay attention, and now he's got a point. What's going on? Normally he's messing up logistics.
What will happen, Rob, one moment. What will happen in an organization when there are agents and there's one process is going wrong? Will one agent blame the other agent? And will there be a discussion between agents?
That's what humans do.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you hear the thing recently? I think it was OpenAI saying this. It might not be, so forgive me if that quote is wrong. But they were saying that there was one particular agent that, for some reason, I don't know what conditions or context it had, but it had a belief that it was about to be deleted, so it replicated itself.
No. Or it bribed the person who told it was going to be deleted, that said he'd leak all the information about he'd done something bad or whatever, and it's like, oh my word.
So I think the answer to that question is probably Marcel. If that's the sort of response, is defensive responses seem to be easy to get.
Well, we have seen a lot of unexpected, unintended events from these types of agents that have been through heavy testing. So the sycophantic one was the other one, where the behavior was just completely unpredicted. Yet it went through a deployment and testing process, but it still behaved oddly, and they had to revoke it. There's that one that did everything to stop its deletion, almost displaying sort of human traits, but.
So it could also be fun, eh? So if that happens, take some beer and chips and just sit and relax and see what happens. So
robot
as long
boxing.
As robot war in real time in your organization.
It's like was it called Robot Wars? That show that used to be on, where a gang of nerds would build a little robot, and then they would have fights between the two.
Not
robots.
nerds, Dave. High quality engineers. Gladiatorial arena. That's it. Not nerds. Yeah. But the thing is, though, if you ever want
high quality engineers in a gladiatorial arena rather than nerds building little robots,
be an interesting mix. Although, if you ever wanted to give motivation to AI, but for why it should take control and delete us all, it's what Marcel just said, where we basically turn them into some form of entertainment through their own distress. I mean, if I'm honest, there's a motivation right there for them to.
I'm not touching that one. I am not going anywhere near that point, Rob. That's all yours.
Thank you, David.
All right, moving on then to theme 4, which again I think has been escalated partly by some of the things we've been talking about, which we'll unpick in a second, but also changes this year in the geopolitical landscape have radically changed how we think about sovereign technologies. Robert, you've been doing a bunch on this in your day job. Why don't you just unpack the changing world of sovereign for us?
Yeah, so, we're going into a more unstable world that has been seen. And so people are starting to look at their reliance. So we've had this period of massive globalization. Supply chains have been stretched. So your digital supply chain, your technology can come from all over the world. People are starting to wonder about their survivability and reliability of that supply chain. And so there's 5 things they're kind of looking at. So what's my legal control over this situation? What's my operational control? What's the supply chain control around the technology? How about my data? Who has access and where is it? And then finally, do I have the skills to be able to operate this locally? And sharp focus is on, if I'm creating and deploying a digital asset, how much autonomy do I actually have over that digital asset? So is it free from interference from others? And what we find is, especially in the technology supply chain, if you take rare earth metals that create the chips, where switching comes from, the network, how clouds are built, who owns the cloud, where's the compiler tech coming from, who owns the language, who owns the database, how much control do I have over it? Then when I deploy my asset, where is it? How do I run it? Who can deny me access to it? There's been this very rapid rise in sort of risk associated with these factors, because people are becoming more and more nervous about this. So sovereignty is becoming a hot topic. What we do see, though, is the markets responding and government entities responding around this, sticking huge amounts of investment in to try and answer the question. So sovereign clouds rising, joint ventures rising, and that that gives peace of mind to associate to that structure I just discussed. So there's been a massive market response, many billions of pounds invested. So it's something that's not going to go away. When this much money goes into the energy of a topic and it happens so fast, you know it's here and it will be part of the way we think moving forward. And so how do you navigate that path? Lots of complexity, lots of confusion, lots of market fragmentation. But essentially, sovereignty is here to stay as a concept as people see a destabilizing world.
I think you said that well, but I think maybe even understated the last bit, which is if you've listened to previous episodes of the show, you may well have heard my change in position on sovereign, because I really did just think it was NIMBYism of the highest order and beyond certain legitimate top secret nation state stuff or potential industrial espionage aspects of what they're doing. The vast majority of the case studies could have been resolved by sensible architecture on the public cloud. But clearly the geopolitics of the situation have really changed that. And it's now moved from purely a data residency conversation, I think, to a much more troubling and complex digital supply chain conversation, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's going back to, if you look at some of the research going out, it is going down to chips are created using rare earth metals. Who has control of rare earth metals? Who creates the chip fabrication? Where is that? That's a massive issue, right? So Europe has the, with organizations to do the basis of the fabrication, but most of the chips occur away from Europe. So what do we do about that? Because without chips as a very basis, none of this digital works. So that's a good example of the supply chain goes right down to where a material's mined from. And that's the level of analysis that's going into this.
Yeah. It is non-trivial.
Yeah.
The other aspect of this that I think it was a real eye-opener for me this season was Chris Stoker-Walker talking about sovereign AI. And there's one way that you can look at sovereign AI, which is connected to everything that Rob just said. So digital supply chain, if you've got nation-state AI that you are mission-critically dependent on, can you control that? Do you fully understand how that machine is actually fundamentally working? And in the case of having certain services removed, does that thing continue to operate correctly? So it's like a massively high order business continuity conversation.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect in it to sovereign AI, which is the notion of an AI that represents your nation state in terms of language, in terms of the economics of that nation state, the major industries, the traditions, the beliefs, all of those sorts of things. These two things to me, the notion of true nation state AI is a representative, and the geopolitic of like fundamental tectonic shifts in this conversation for me.
Yeah. And it absolutely is. So how am I training my AI? Does it represent me? So if I'm in a society using a model that's available today, there may be some issues with the way that responds or the way it makes decisions that may not be aligned to your political or social angle. Yeah, that happens. The world is very different over. So how do I create those AI engines that I can control and have autonomy over? The first part of the conversation. But the second one is, how do I train it so that it represents us? Because if you're to do this agentic, nation state to nation state, which we talked about scaling, you need to make sure that the AIs you're using represent you properly.
But that's a big question, because who are you? Or at least who do you want to be? And I think that goes deeper than a marketing slogan. That's how do we share everything that we have in a company? How do we want people to behave? And yes, also our agents. But I don't think we have a lot of those conversations in companies, to be honest.
No, we create agents and then we go, is this the agent we want to represent us? And you're absolutely right. I don't think we've got onto that part of the conversation. What'll happen is we'll build a load, deploy it, it'll do something we didn't want, and then we'll all stand back and go, that didn't go well. Whoops.
Should have got an AI ethicist on it, Rob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's loads of famous quotes in history about things like, when we were doing it, did we stop to think, should we? I think they're going to come out a lot in the next 10 years.
You're going to get loads of sort of Jeff Goldblum types pulling the
memes.
Jurassic Park speech.
Yeah, exactly. That is the one I was thinking of.
So I think we bracketed those four themes together because I think the interconnection between them are some of the bigger questions of our time. And it's been thrilling to sort of hold a mirror up to all of that as it's developing over the course of this season. Humming away underneath all of this, though, is also the question of sustainability and power. We touched on it a number of times across the season because it is important, and there has also, I think, been a shift in view based on the power requirements of AI and what we need to do to be able to do that sustainably. Very briefly, Rob, how does that all square with you?
So we know we're going to need a lot more power if we want to do the things we're going to do. There's huge amounts of work going into efficiency to make it less power hungry, but fundamentally what we're seeing is the rise of nuclear come to the gate, small modular reactors. We did a pod on them, which is you basically build your data center and you park a modular reactor next to it, and it also helps build the microgrids. So rather than build these great big humongous power stations, you have lots of little ones. It creates much more resilience in the system, which is a great thing, linking back to the capability of your sovereign nation to survive. Big part of its power. We're going to need a lot more of it. It's good to be green, keep pushing in that, but the base load will still be there. And so that's going to need that alternative. Nuclear, albeit comes with some issues, it is a very green technology from a perspective of carbon. So if we want more power and supply the demand, but we don't want to create carbon, then it's rapidly rising as probably the only solution available to us at the moment to be able to catch up.
And notwithstanding a major breakthrough in how you train models and such like, we're just going to see that going up. We've seen some extreme power consumption stats to train some of the bigger models on the market. And we've also seen announcements from tech organizations in nuclear research, and, it's inevitable.
And it's that one, please don't say thank you to the AI because it costs me a lot of money and burns a lot of power. I want to be a nice human. But yeah, it's like that to say it's like millions of pounds just in P's and Q's. So how much power is that just in people being pleasant?
If we lose that, on the contrary, then we might also lose those values. And those rituals,
the human
continue to just drop out of, oh no, that's just taking money and efficiency. Let's not thank somebody. Are you then going to stop thanking people in real life?
All right. So as we get into now the second half of it's almost the second half. We've done 4. We're going to do 6. So let's call it the second half. It's a smaller half, Rob. It's a small.
It's the last third, Dave. Technically, there is a word in our language to define 2 out of 4 added together, which is a third.
Now you said it like that. It seems really obvious. But I didn't think of it when I started this. But let's keep pushing on anyway. For the first time in the show, we've actually tried to do a couple of little mini-series threads this season. So obviously we've spent a fair amount of airtime on these two threads. So we thought it would be worth just pulling these 2 things together. So the first one was a focus on a particular vertical industry. And we thought it might be interesting to go deep into a particular industry, obviously learn more about that particular space, but also kind of look at what the resonance out into other industries might be, what are the lessons learned that have come from that particular industry. And for varying different reasons, we chose the telco industry this season. We thought it was an industry that was interesting because it was pivoting its services. It is trying to deal with a very complex legacy situation. And it's trying to work out how, given its criticality for everything we're doing in society these days, how it doesn't just become, a commodity provider. So, Ez, how did we try and unpack that?
Well, together with our guest host, let's not forget Praveen, because he lives telco, and I think that's very useful to have as a guest host as well. And also, of course, he's a very enthusiastic guy.
What are you suggesting? We actually had a host that knew what they were talking about for a change, Esmee?
Yeah, and then we actually just called him a guest host, and now he's, he went off the stage again just to, make sure that we stay on.
He was looking so good for a minute there, wasn't it? Especially that one we did without Rob.
Easy. I'm right here. I'm a human, Dave. We just talked about humanity.
Yes.
I couldn't. resist
Even
it.
I, an architect, have feelings.
Well, talking about feelings, I think the connection part, what we saw also at MWC, the ecosystem coming together, helping telcos move away from commodity to more and more to the front stage to make sure that things get more connected. So we've organized around 5 recurring themes that we've discussed together with different guests, of course. We talked about growth, the collective capabilities across the ecosystem, across organizations, making sure that, telcos also challenge regulatory capabilities and use that as a growth lever instead of maybe even a blocker. And also talking about human impact, of course, trust. They've always made sure that we were interconnected, the telcos, with all the network lines. I think we've been using that for ages. And now you can actually see them utilize that. And they also utilize AI for that, for the networks going towards 6G, obviously. Yeah. So that's what we see happening. And as I already mentioned before, they still see in some parts of the world that the networks aren't being utilized as much as they could, but that's more on the adoption side. So I think that's also still something to touch upon, that networks actually mirror culture. That's also, I think, was a very interesting topic. So after growth networks, we also talked about simplification. So cutting through complexity in the world of telcos to make sure that it's all, that it makes sense, that it's connected all together and aligning across what matters. And obviously data and AI. Scaling, routing calls, making sure that, it's being recognized that it has context, emotion, urgency, and risks, obviously, is an important topic when it comes to networks and everything in telco land and regulations. Trust infrastructure. I think that especially in geopolitics and everything that we've just discussed, they can help us trust the networks and the lines that we're using to communicate and also to have in our homes as well. So I was also thinking about those cars. I don't know if you have those discussions as well, but you now also see a lot of people that are very conscious what their car is made of. Who's owning the tag, who's owning all the data that are in those cars.
Yeah. So it's a classic, is your car sovereign? So if an external country manages the control software and they shut it down, does your car stop working? And in fact, with Tesla, we've seen a number of cases where they've been able to deactivate cars and they go dead. So, you don't have autonomy over the use of your vehicles. It's a very good example of consumer tech that might be under control of another nation state. And people are starting to think about exactly those types of points.
So on top of those 5 episodes, we also did a 6th bonus episode with GSMA, like looking at overall industry change, things like automated control of networks. I thought was really interesting, where you could have, for example, an AI agent spin up a network to do a specific thing using what do they call it? Open API or something like that?
Open RAN and ORAN and things like that.
Yeah. So there's like just a huge amount going on there. There is the variance of service, like I was saying. So if you're at one of the Oasis concerts that is happening over the course of the summer and they're a big event, how do you actually, can you buy a tier of service that will guarantee you connectivity in crowded situations? Having gone to the Goodwood Festival of Speed last week, I can say with all assurity that is not in place yet. I could not get a signal to save my life. So I think that would be a potentially interesting thing to be able to do, especially if you could do it on the fly and you really needed an emergency situation to get out. So the telecoms piece, I thought, was a really interesting exercise to understand that amount of depth and dimensionality in a particular industry. What were the big themes that came out of it that you thought were resonant for others? And while you have a think about that, the big one for me was dealing with legacy and being able to deploy new large scale, but at the same time still having to deal with the financial difficulties of legacy and sunk assets and things like that. 5G being a good one, where I'd missed the fact that a lot of endpoints were being converted to 5G, but actually one of the biggest challenges in 5G is all of the core conversion, which is somewhat still throttling it and is still a big focus for the industry. Were there any big takeaways for you, Ez, in terms of what you heard in telco that is resonant elsewhere?
reinventing business models, like as you also mentioned, that the upscaling, like, I want to now upload a video, so make sure that I have maybe even a service that I can turn on my app, and to make sure that I get that video uploaded now, but not have that continuous service, with a high price, and that reinvention. I love that. It feels like they're all coming together and thinking about that end user and thinking about the way they're responsible. That's what I also see in the industry, is that they show that responsibility, but also in terms of consumer value. We've been walking around a lot, and you see also, the new phones and what is it that can actually bring something good. But that reinvention, that maybe, I don't know if they were in the ashes, to be honest, but it feels like they did rise, and that they're now conquering a lot of more areas than we would even think about when it comes to telcos.
Well, given MWC make a big deal of it this year, do you know what area they still haven't reinvented yet?
If you bring up flying cars with some tenuous link, Dave, I'm going to be very upset.
The flying car, Rob. It's still not there, is it?
Oh,
you
went to Goodwood, so you saw the new Jag concept car. That was on display there.
I did not see that. And you know what? We were even talking about it. Was it there?
Yeah. That's the full
helicopter.
Yeah.
Does it fly?
The launch. No. It's the complete new design was there, wasn't it?
I did not know that. That's interesting.
The rebrand.
My brother and I had a discussion about that. We missed it. Anyway, where I was going was flying cars. I did see a new attempt at this by a Chinese manufacturer. Did you see this? I did send a link round. Yes. And basically it's a van with a little helicopter in the back. So it's not a flying car, is it? It is a van with a little helicopter in it. I mean, quite a good looking van.
The problem you've got, Dave, I think with the physics we use today, you need either a jet engine or a rotor above you. And as soon as you see either of those, you just say that's a plane. You're actually after the flying car a la Fifth Element. And unfortunately, the physics of our lifetime will not be able to deliver that. So you're always just going to say it's just a helicopter.
Rob's been a proper buzzkill about that, isn't he?
Well, I think the biggest question is what are we trying to solve with a flying car?
What Dave wants is to be the only one who's got one, and then he can just fly around without any interference whatsoever, and then just never get stuck in
the speed you'd be able to get around. Anyway, all right. So look, Telco mini-series, we hope you enjoyed that. It's something we're hoping to do next season with a different vertical. I know we very much enjoyed the deep dive, and a big thanks to Praveen for all of the work that he put into the production of that as well, and some fantastic guests in that thread. Now, it wasn't the only thread we had on this season, so
no.
We finally got to the sixth and final theme. This time, it was one we built out of our new Access All Areas style episode, and that was where we got friends on to have a sort of a bigger, slightly clumsier, more open conversation about a particular sort of set of themes. And Rob worked on our Cloud on the Rocks thread this year, Rob. So
is that a way of saying if everybody thinks it's rubbish, it was my fault? Is that you discharge responsibility there? Yeah. So anyway, after that complete disaster, Rob has no editorial control of the show in the future. You'll all be glad to know.
No, it was very good. Rob, what did we do in that?
So operating model, always critical to make sure you use your technology correctly. So we talked about the big rocks that people don't smash up. And by not smashing them up, people can't be free to do the right thing within an organizational structure. So the product and the platform as the future. And we broke up into three. So we talked about the overarching control, so how we manage risk and governance and how that has to change to allow us to get autonomy. We did that with Georgia Smith. Mm-hmm. Then we went on to, we have to rewire all our financials to make new operating models work. So financial structure defines people structure defines how the output works. So basically, if you don't rewire the finances, you get an output that looks like it always did. And we went into quite a lot of detail with that with Chris Dudgeon and Jazz Back. And then finally, we spoke to Jasmine about the product itself and what makes a good product. So cross-team collaboration, capacity, demand, all of those sorts of things touched on cognitive overload. But the point is, If you take the first macro one, the finances one, and the product one, what you're able to do is understand the big things you have to deal with within an organizational dynamic to make it work correctly. So those are the rocks that we like to smash apart. So that was the intent of the theme. And if you listen to the 3 episodes, it gives you a nice arc associated with that conversation.
It does. For me, it was almost like a bit of a back to basics on how you get cloud right sort of thread.
That's fair. And I think
with all of the dynamics that are prevalent in that and all of the interconnected difficulty and complexity that exists there.
And these aren't easy things for organizations to do. So an organization that survived for 20, 30 years, suddenly changing the way they perceive risk at the core is actually a really hard thing to do. And getting the CFO involved in the conversation and actually taking the people through you have to really properly change outside of the technology domain. Otherwise, you get very frustrated people. But if you get autonomy, it can really free an organization as long as that autonomy is balanced with good risk control and good observability and transparency. So there's a huge prize at the end of doing this. And if you get it right, and some have, it creates very powerful structures. I always remember back to one of the earlier conversations we had with the guys who did the book about the Wardley mapping. And they talked about how they completely transformed the core of the culture and the governance and the structure and the technology with Liberty Mutual. And it had a fantastic outcome. That's a great use case that stands the test of time to say, actually, people have done it and it did work.
One of the things you hear a lot, even now, 10 odd years into cloud, is I went into cloud, it didn't change anything, and it just ended up getting more expensive. And I think what you're poking at there are the 20 other things alongside the technology that you need to be thoughtful about to be able to really drive it. And some of them are proper top of the shop, quite profound changes to organizations. The big one to me, beyond the financial framework, which is obviously always sensitive, is the notion of empowerment and empowerment in product teams and trust, and turning that series of dynamics on its head to allow people that you might perceive to be somewhere down the organization to have decision-making rights on things like go live or product changes. And that's a big shift for the old humans in it, Ez.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially for the leaders, they have to let go of control, or at least change their perspective on how do I have control. I think that's the biggest thing that we also see from more of project management approach towards agile. It's a different way of getting more control because you're more on top of it. You're iterative, you know more. That's the idea behind iterative development. But somehow it feels more comfortable to have an entire project plan that we all know is going to fail. So I think that's a different perspective on letting go of power or finding your comfort in knowing things from a shorter perspective or shorter time frame, and letting go of that power is, I think, the biggest change maybe for a leader when you go into that new type of governance models or organizational models, working in an agile manner. That's going to be the toughest challenge, I think.
Do you remember the pod we did with Hellman Logistics? And they basically did that, where they took a group of people who knew what they were doing, and they discharged responsibility and said, you go and change the way our supply chain works. So massive responsibility, literally the core of the business. And then they talked about the results they got. And it was amazing because they gave them the freedom and the power, and they could make the decision at a local level. And they got these amazing results. And that's an example of a traditional organization that turned itself on its head and worked really well. And again, it stands the test of time, great results. People were happier. Performance went up. Why don't you do it? And I think it's probably down to people like to keep control, and it's in their psyche. And it's a different type of leadership. I know you talk about this a lot, Dave, but if you don't fundamentally change style of leadership, you ain't going to get the autonomy associated with it.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a look back on season 4 and some of the things that really stood out to us as being both resonant and intellectually challenging, but also I think things that you can really see the industry talking about. The one episode we didn't touch on, which we'll just give a shout out to, was when Jean Kim joined us again just before Christmas, where we set out some trends for the year. You feel like those trends are broadly on, Rob? I'm feeling quite good about them.
Well, I mean, he wrote the book on what we've just talked about. So Cloud on the Rocks and all the things is literally, he started that.
You saying you stole all those ideas from Jane Kim?
Basically, the Phoenix Project DevOps Handbook and all the wiring the winning organization and things like this, they're all telling us to break the paradigm that we discussed in Big Rocks. And so, yes, it was very good to hear his view on it, and they all hold true. So the organizational dynamic constructs that we talk about now have been true for a number of years. It's just people need to get better at implementing them correctly.
So it was an interesting episode, that, and it's always lovely to have Gene on. He's such a well of knowledge. So that gives you an idea of what resonated with us over the course of season 4. We think it also somewhat represents what's going on in the industry, and they are exciting and difficult and important subjects to wrestle with in a lot of cases, whether that's for your organization or even society at large at the moment. Fascinating stuff. If we didn't touch on the thing that resonated with you, please let us know. We would love to know what you're thinking and what the show triggers for you. And to that end, for the first time, we're delighted to say that we are going to end the season with a series of listener questions. So is everyone ready?
Yes.
I'm ready until I hear the question.
Mm-hmm.
And then I might choose to opt out, or suddenly my internet connection drops.
Shall I give you some input?
Yeah, Marcel is going to be the voice of the listener.
Yeah.
So Marcel,
I'm here.
Who have we heard from first in the mailbag, and what's the question?
Yeah, so Daniel Delicate, he had a question related to, I know you and the team often quote the Cynefin framework. How would you use it in development and operating model or strategy for IT?
I mean, that's a good question. It is. I'll have a run at this, and others might want to jump in a sec, because
it's close to your heart, Dave.
I am particularly passionate about it. As a bit of a reminder for everybody, the Cynefin framework has got describes 4 states of the world and some liminal states that exist in between it. The world of order, which is order itself, which is repeatable, quite well understood process. The world of the complicated, which is it could be vastly difficult to do, but the level of unknown unknowns and that are low, and therefore the level of planability is high. And then there's the world of chaos, where you have chaos itself, where it could be battlefield conditions, and you just have to take one step forward, even though you don't know if it's in the right direction. And then finally, you have complexity, which is a state where it exists in between complicated and chaos. So you've got slightly longer lead times, but the level of iteration and market test needs to be very high. So in my mind, this does relate to the state of organizations and leadership within organizations. And I know that Dave Snowden would probably be rolling his eyes horrifically at what I'm about to say. So Dave, apologies for this in advance. But in the world of complicated, which has been the world of traditional technology, waterfall style design, planning horizons of 3 years, annual goal setting, all work within that predictable world. And what seems to have happened is the world generally has shifted into being more complex. So when you're trying to drive new products, you need a much faster turnaround time for that. You need to be able to scan what your market is telling you and be able to respond to that very quickly. So in my simpleton mind, I sort of see broadly the world of sort of waterfall projects and very plannable IT, and therefore you're trying to make it efficient the whole time, as being quite aligned to the world of the complicated. But world of product-based work, where you're putting stuff out and you're testing things and you're pulling it back in, and the world of agile delivery is much more the domain of the complex. So that can then relate to how you're structuring your organization and how you're leading your organization and the tools that you're using and things like that. And I think what really drove that shift, in my mind at least, was the advent of cloud technology. Because previously, whether you liked it or not, you had a certain lead time on your technology. So even if you had like product teams doing like really sexy, fast things, they would have struggled to do it because of things like lead time on technology. cloud completely removed anything like that. So the tick speed and the ability to iterate at your own speed or at the speed of your market really became the main thing. So the pivot of IT operating model from operating in a complicated way to operating in a complex way is core, in my mind, to any digital transformation.
And multi-speed. I think we've touched upon that as well in this season. If you're talking about automation or standardization, that's very clear. That isn't complex. So please just don't try to make that more complex than the easiness it is. If you just keep it clear and crisp and automate, things can be at a lower pace or less complex. And I think it's not a one size fits all, that everything needs to be in Kanban or everything needs to be in 2 weekly sprints or etc. Because I see that still happening a lot, that we choose one way of working, but still, you need that adaptability also per team, per context, per product, to decide what is the best speed and complexity and way of managing tough decisions and impediments. So it really depends on the context within an organization itself as well, including leadership styles and maturity levels.
I think if you take what happened and where it demonstrates the Cynefin framework structure, a good one is you might have been in complex or complicated, but COVID pushed us very quickly into chaos.
Yeah.
And then organizations had to navigate their way back to either complicated or complex. And it was a good example of very quickly an external event can occur and push you into chaos. What you need is to design your entities, mechanisms, and capabilities to be able to cope with external things you just didn't know were coming and to be able to adapt quickly. So the organization that can adapt fast, and we saw this in COVID, they won. Those who didn't really struggled and had massive issues. And so it's a great way of framing a situation, then understanding what you might need to do to do next or the next best step, etc.
I mean, very good. The Cynefin framework is, we have covered it a lot on the show, and it is very sort of close to where I start a lot of the conversations that I do in my day job. So thank you for the question, Danny. That is a real cracker. Marcel, who we've got next?
Yep. So Andrea Kis. So she was asking, and we discussed it already a little bit, but it's a very valid question. So how can we all influence the fast-moving tech world to never lose its humanity? Or how can we keep up the drive and hope and not give up? As maybe you?
Maybe we should turn the way around. Let's start with humanity, who we want to be, and then look at, from that perspective, look at tech. And now it seems that the tech has the highest priority or the most dominant one, obviously also because the cultural one and the who do we want to be is under pressure at the moment, and is very diverse across the entire world. So it's quite tough. I think, referring to Jitske again, turn off the laptop, sit together, and just have real conversations and slow down, go back into seasons, and then see, how do we want tech to help us, and create those moments, small moments for yourself in your teams, in your organization, where you can, if you have the influence, to bring people together and have those conversations.
I think and that's very good. But it always makes me think about the story about the individual who created the world's first search algorithm. And they created an ecosystem where it gave you the best possible results. So they were implementing check. It was very useful to people. Their motivation was morally sound, trying to make a better world so you get hold of the information. Massive unintended consequences that tech and those algorithms have been expanded and now have created massive echo chambers that have created an inability for society to have good discussion, and people shout at each other on the social platforms, etc. So we've always got that balance to say everybody might agree the intent was good, but the actual outcome became corrupted quite quickly. And I don't know what the answer to that is, because we didn't perceive it at the time we were breaking new ground, because we didn't understand what that new ground would bring. And then it's only after, we're 10 years later, we've gone, oh yeah, that did kind of really wreck a fair bit of society. And you sort of go, oh yeah. So, the theming is right. It's just, how do you stop things you don't understand from having unintended consequences? The complexity of that is very difficult.
The unknowability, I think, of the impact of social, in my mind, was its scale.
Yeah.
So, when you had people ranting at each other on the village square, the
There was a bit of humanity in that, which is they could see each other and see they were having an effect.
You could see each other and you could see the impact you're having. And also,
or they punched you.
Yeah,
that was the good feedback.
One way or another,
it wasn't like
a
a thumb down. You got a real punch.
That's right. It would have consequences potentially, and also everybody would know you said it. There was a lack of anonymity, and also the amount of people you're dealing with there is so much smaller. When you scale that up to sort of global level, and you have these sorts of polarized conversations, I tend to agree. I don't think you can wind anything back, because it would be ridiculous to say it should all be shut down and things like that, because it's simply never going to happen. And I'm not sure trying to take an intentional backward step is necessarily a good idea either. But it certainly has to play out. One of the things you said, as I like very much, was you take time for those conversations, take time to recognize the seasons, take time to do these kind of physical or human things. And then I think apply that to what you are doing with technology and think about that. So if you're creating, even if it's a new agent, or you're creating a technology transformation of some description or a new program, whatever you do, don't make the change management bit where you crowbar the human aspect and then schedule an email once a quarter to communicate what you're doing. That is insubstantial, and it's thin in its thinking. And where most good IT design should start is human-centric. What's driving this, and how should the customer? Let's say the customer in this case is a stand-in for the human at the center of what you're going to subject them to, and think about it in a way that's additive, not in a way that just kind of makes your product more efficient or whatever it might be. Marcel, who's next?
So a big shout out to one of our sort of loyal followers, especially on LinkedIn. Always very positive with his feedback. Ezhil Suresh. So the question is from how do you prepare or select the topics, and how in advance are you done and recorded? Mm-hmm. Good question. So guests are coming in via all kinds of channels. So via our own network, that's one. So good keynote speakers at events with our vendors, but also clients. And when we have selected a strong guest, then we will first prepare a sort of pre-briefing call. Pre-briefing call is 30 minutes for meet and greet, and also discuss the topics on the podcast. And then we will always create a so-called production sheet with all the details in. So that's centrally stored on Teams. And all the hosts, so Dave, Rob, and Esmee, they will give their feedback into that production sheet. And while recording, Dave is looking at the production sheet and just go with the flow on the topics. So that's basically the whole process. After recording, of course, there's an edit mode with our editors Ben and Louis.
Long suffering.
Yeah, they will take out the slip of the tongues, add music, etc., and then we give a draft version to our guest for approval. Often PR must be connected to that, or comes from the client. And when approved, then we plan the release.
Marcel, can I tap into this process? Because now it sounds like it's all
smooth and by the numbers.
Yeah, well, no, that it's all fluid. Because let's talk about a good prepared production sheet. How many bullets do we need?
Oh,
to
not
be
this
in
again.
Let's put up the lid. Let's
5 or 6.
Tell our listeners the truth about what's happening.
Let's just say to the listeners, the way production sheets are prepared by me and the way production sheets are prepared by Dave can be somewhat different.
Yes.
And Dave often complains.
Yes. But my sort of preference for a production sheet is 5 to 7 bullet points.
Content.
5 to 7 bullet points that will just give me a structure off which we can then collectively, have a discussion. I think you go for 5 to 7 pages, don't you, Rob?
I just like
it's like you're reading a novel. It's like you're reading a novel.
I just like to provide you, our primary host, with all the information you would need to make a thrilling and scintillating podcast. I like to think, I'm providing you more.
It's
to make
all
sure you get what you need.
All goodness.
Yeah, it's all goodness.
Yes. But you're right. It is a dark art, the production sheet. Just getting just enough information to give us a little bit of steering where we need to go and to give the guest a heads up on the subject matter. Because some of our subject matter, it's not just necessarily general conversation. There's quite a lot of depth in it. So we go through a preparation loop for each one. The guest choice aspect is driven by the process that Marcel talked about, and then we make a call on which guests that we're going to have, because we have across the season like a loosely coupled structure, which means we want people to be able to dip in wherever they want. We don't want to necessarily editorialize much beyond the 2 mini-series we talked about at the end of the themes there, which is the first time we've really deeply editorialized something. Most of the time, we let it be loosely coupled, and that helps with scheduling and various other things. The other thing I think it does, which is a byproduct of that editorial, and something I'm really delighted about, is that we like hold a mirror up to the industry. And you can see in the evolution of the show, for example, we've charted the rise of the AI conversation and where that's got to, from the very early OMG aspect of ChatGPT through to the sorts of stuff we talked about in the first 3 themes today, like real changes in societal aspects and societal point of view on AI. Now, you wouldn't necessarily have got to that if you sat down to try and write, what should we cover? So there's an element of the structuring and the production that's important like that, I think.
Yeah, and it's a living, breathing narrative arc, isn't it, that we create?
Yeah.
So we have an idea, and then the experiences we have when we meet all the interesting people, which is a bit of a, for me, the biggest part of the enjoyment of the podcast is then we vary it on the way through. So what I like about these end shows is that we sort of consolidate on what we thought and we talk about the things that surprised us.
Yeah, and if you want to get a delta between those 2 things, if you do go back to the Gene Kim episode we talked about, which is the Christmas episode in 2024, and just compare it to what we've just talked about now, and we'll let you be the judge of how well we did. And that might give you a clue as to why we don't over-editorialize the show. Marcel, we have time for one more, I think.
One more question from John Eaton-Griffin. He's also a host on Cloudy with a Chance of Dyslexia. And it's quite a nice question, food for thought, I think. Did any guest that you had this season actually get you to change your thinking dramatically? I think it is. We had amazing guests.
There's definitely one for me that stands out. Made me. We've had him on twice, and Anders Inset and the simulation theory. And I remember the first time we spoke to him about it, and for months it played on my mind. I started looking into it. I started to think about it, and then it's been like an 18-month journey. And I actually now, sort of think, oh, blimey, there's something, there's really something in this about when you compare it. And that, for me, was a big cognitive shift. I hadn't really considered it. I just thought, what are they talking about? And then I got into it. I went, oh, man, there really is something quite serious behind this conversation. And so that's been a big change for me.
Ez, how about you?
It's hard to choose, but I think the one we talked about, robots at the borders of Mexico.
Oh yeah,
that was mind blowing. But it was also Petra talking about it, and she was so passionate. I was very impressed. She uses 2 dimensions, 2 different types of intelligence, and that's really close to her talent. So I think that was beautiful to have her explain how law and the impact on human beings and using robotics to the security boarding and how that impacts real human lives. Yeah, I was very impressed by that episode.
That was on my list too. I was almost to the point of being a little bit shaken by some of the things she was saying on that episode. Partly it was the robot dog use, and partly it was the being sentenced by a faceless AI if you're crossing a border and you're doing it with your family and you're in a scared state, that a faceless kind of AI might make a decision about you and where you might end up. The way she framed that was deeply scary.
It goes back to the AI ethics point.
it really put you in the shoes of the person who might be on the other side of that. Now, on the other side of the development of the technology, there may well be just very good intents about efficiency and trying to do things in a fast way and processing and all those sorts of things. But the human element at the center of it, to me, goes right to the heart of bad implementation of technology or technology implemented for the wrong reasons, how it can negatively impact on
and
one
it's already
human
happening.
or society.
It's not a book. It's not this might happen. It's like it's already happening right now.
Right. Marcel, what about you?
It's not one guest. It's more the whole sort of live episodes that we did with AWS, Microsoft, and Google. The mind-blowing sort of technology development that's being presented every day, every hour by keynote sessions, and the change on the whole world. That's really amazing and flabbergasting, and also scaring, I think, a little bit. Is it? Yeah, we talked about speed, but isn't it going too fast? We see a lot of sort of end user solutions. How will that be implemented in organizations? But that whole shift, I'm already old, but I have never seen a sort of technology in the last year, 1.5 years, really explode. It's amazing what's happening, and that really changed my thinking and how I look at things. So yeah, that really changed it.
Yeah, mine were actually largely talked about in the episode, but I had Yitzka on for sure, and her just a different way of viewing organizations from an anthropological perspective, and some of the customs and traits of kind of our ancestors and how they're visible in society today. I thought was deeply fascinating. Petra Molnar was also on my list. We've already talked about it, but the raw edge of technology impacting on humans, I thought she communicated beautifully and terrifyingly. And then finally, Chris Stoker-Walker's position on sovereign AI. It deepened my understanding of sovereign and what sovereign was in the current geopolitical landscape that we have. But it actually also, I'd not really thought about AI as being representative of nation state before, and then how those AIs themselves might interact with other nation states as being a likely future. So for me, there's something in that I think is really resonant. Thank you to our listeners there who took the time to send in some feedback and some questions. We only had a chance to do a few of them. We had a delightfully long list, and actually we'll try and come to them, I think, maybe in season 5. And we would love to make the listener dialogue a part of the main show. So if you're up for that and you'd like to get involved, please do get in touch with the show. Ez will give us more information on that a bit later on in the show.
Can I do a voice of the co-host? I just have one question for us.
Yeah.
What is the most used sentence in this season? I'll give you 3 options. Maybe you even have a 4th option.
Oh, man.
Option 1. Marcel, are you on your mic?
Yeah, okay, like that one. Yeah, that's a frequency.
Option B. Are you on a PC or a Mac?
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Option C. Did you push record?
They're all, before we answer the question, they're all associated with Marcel's role.
No.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are.
Recording. No, not. Are you on a PC or a Mac? Is usually something we should, elaborate on that. For if a guest comes in on the platform, we usually struggle a bit with the audio settings. And then one of the first questions, and we usually we just stare at Rob, to be honest, or at least Marcel.
Tech support for the podcast.
Extremely good at tech support.
We all know that person that's tech support. Well, in our team, that is Rob. So then his sentence always, are you on a PC or on a Mac? And then we actually start to applaud when it's a Mac. And we start to boo No, it's not. No, it's
well,
not.
do you remember Dave Snowden's response? He went, "No, I want a proper operating system," and then proceeded to declare Linux. So we're like, "Whoa, we've never had this before." You're on your own, Dave.
Is there a control panel on it?
I'm not on a calculator.
I'm still questioning whether you're on your mic or not, but hey.
No, it's B, because Rob asked at least 150 times this question in the last 2.5 years. So
It must be. I'm going to go B as well.
I would like to think it's did you push record because of the lost content in Chicago, which we won't go over and open that wound again. So I'll concur with B because it does come up a lot. Are we correct?
It is B.
It is
Excellent.
B. Excellent.
Yes.
All right, so that's it. That is a wrap on season 4. Really good season. Ez, your first season.
Yes. Woo.
Yes. Will there be a second?
Yes. Well. Yes. From my point of view, yes. But it takes in this case 4 to tango.
Oh no! I think we're all in. I mean, a brilliant first season. I thought. I loved the edge that you brought to many conversations,
and the surprise video recording that we did at the events was always quite cool.
It was quite cool. So Ez will be back next season. Rob and I'll be back next season. Marcel will be pulling us all forward next season. So we have got some stuff in store. We're still working it out. We'll be working on it over the summer. We will be doing more Access All Areas episodes. So those were like Cloud on the Rocks, where we had a bunch of friends in, and we'll do slightly rawer conversations. We are looking at another industry vertical to deep dive in next season. We will obviously be covering all of the main hyperscaler events. Those are sort of quite key to our calendar and help us track that the sort of technology announcement aspect of what we cover on the show. And then if you like, the rest of the show is like, and then what do you do with that? Is the way I sort of think about it. So those are staples in our calendar. And of course, the show wouldn't be the show without the guests. As we've talked about, and we've name-checked a number of guests, but we've only scratched the surface on how strong the guest lineup has been in season 4. A huge thank you to everybody who took the time to come on the show, prepare for the show, work with us on making some points about some of the big things that are going on in our industry at the moment. You are a lifeblood, so thank you very much to all of the guests this year. But there are other things coming in season 5, a couple of new things that we hope will drive an increased interaction with a wider audience of listeners. So, Ez, why don't you tell us about our AI babies?
Yes, so we're bringing in a baby, and the question is, is he or she or it going to look like? Is it going to be more of a Rob or a Marcel, or is it going to be like a morphed version? We should also talk about that. But at least it's going to be a bot, an AI bot, obviously, that you can ask questions about all kinds of topics that we've been discussing. So that's going to be exciting. And we're also extending the conversation on Substack. And I think that is also very exciting to have thought-provoking questions and conversations, experiments, maybe even behind-the-scenes reflections, and guests coming and dropping in other reflections after that maybe they've been on the show, and that's all on Substack. So please also follow us there and put in all your questions, whatever you want to share with us, and then we can have a continuous conversation throughout the season.
If you would like a preview of the Substack, Ez has done an absolutely amazing job starting to build it out. So you can find us as the Cloud Realities podcast on Substack. Please do go and have a look there. We'll be launching it more formally as we think about season 5 a bit later in the year, but the build has started. So we would love you to go over there and join us and make that a little bit of a community conversation. And we'll bring that into the main show if that starts to develop. So yeah, go jump on that. Now, we end every episode of this podcast by asking our guests what they're excited about doing next. And I thought, given where we are, it's become a tradition to ask what our colleagues are excited about doing over the summer. So, Marcel, what are you excited about doing over the summer?
Yeah, so normally I go to my island Bonaire, but this year I will go to
Their economy. Their economy is supported by Vandenberg Industries.
So it will be Aruba in the end of this year, but during the summer we will go on holiday to Italy with the car.
Big question is what's the Department of Education in Bonaire going to do without your funding?
Without,
but my wife was
just think
there
of all
in
the
June.
uneducated people who are going to now exist in that society.
They thought they could have trade deal with Marcel about 2 or 3 years ago, and they built that into their budget, Marcel.
Yeah, not this year, but I'll go to Aruba in the Christmas season. But yeah, Italy with the car.
Whereabouts in
and
Italy
the
are you
dog. And so first go to Lake Garda and then to the Mark, and then also to the Dolomites. So 3 weeks in total. So that's
stunning.
Nice. Yep.
Stunning. What an amazing place to visit. And Robert, big fan of Italian wine, right, Robert?
Oh yeah. The Brunello by far and away.
I'm close to the Brunello region, so
you need to go. You need to. There's a few people I know who point out local vineyards as well that are very good that you can frequent. So I shall let you know those.
I'll bring you a bottle.
Yeah, very good. That's been like, but I love the wines from Tuscany particularly and Umbria.
Be nice. Well, while you've got the mic, Rob, what are you excited about doing over the summer?
The excitement's done. I've had my summer holiday because I've got 2 with exams, so I was able to go out school holiday. So we took the advantage and the price drop, and I've been. So now I've just got to look forward to picking up all the workload while you lot aren't here.
Yes.
So I've got work now. My excitement is over. But no, we just enjoyed a trip to the States up the East Coast, which is very good, and came back. And the kids liked the experiencing the American culture for the first time.
Now we haven't talked about this yet because our holidays cross over a bit, and we're actually recording the season finale a little bit later than we normally would have. But because Rob was off gallivanting, we didn't get a chance to do it. So I am actually on holiday as we're recording this. But Robert, the big question I want to ask you is, how good was the pizza at Lombardi's?
Now it was 2 highlights. It was because we did Cat's Delis as well, but Lombardi's was very nice, which was the first American pizzeria in New York. So it was very tasty. I really like it because it's still quite back to basics in its sense. It's not gone fancy and flash, but it's pizza.
And there are trendier places perhaps to go, I think, to get pizza these days. But I think that's just like one of the all-timers, I think.
And going back to our conversation in Chicago, obviously pizza being a prime topic, I had to go to the original place of the New York pizza. So there you go.
Quite right. So out of 10, what would you give a Lombardi's pizza?
It's pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
You're allowed to use one decimal place. You're allowed to use one decimal place.
I do a 9.5. It was very, very good. It was like we did actually have the conversation that I can't, for a long time, I can't remember having a pizza that was as tasty. So yeah, I'm sure I can't give it full marks because you always have to hold a little bit back. But it was of high standard.
Highly recommend that place. Highly recommend it. Ez, what are you looking forward to doing over the summer?
We're going to hike in the German Alps. So a lot of hiking and in wellness hotels and going by car.
Oh, very nice.
Zen.
Yes, very zen. Digital detox. Just enjoy nature and some time off.
Do you think you'll go to one of the wellness places that's actually slightly cultish? Have you seen 9 Perfect Strangers season 2?
No.
They're in one of those like alpine wellness places. You might want to have a quick look at that before you go. Just in case.
Isn't the current White Lotus at a wellness place in Thailand for the season 4?
Don't. Let's not get into all those horror scenarios, please.
Well, maybe you could star in series 5.
I want to go stressless, just want to go in and enjoy.
Might be useful to prep yourself just in case,
No, thanks.
No, not getting a big amount of enthusiasm for that.
No.
We want something to talk about when you come back.
Detox. I want to go offline for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and then just see what happens.
And you, Dave?
Well, like I said, I'm already actually on holiday because we're recording this a little late. So I'm in Cornwall in the UK at the moment and just about to have family holiday for a couple of weeks. So that, from a point of view of just a bit like you, Ez, just to put my phone down for a bit and just focus on the world around me rather than, running after things the whole time, is something I'm very much looking forward to. And this sounds a bit cheesy, but I'm actually really looking forward to starting to work on season 5. And every time we do these things, we learn a lot from each season. And I'm particularly looking forward to season 5 because I think we have got maybe a slight repositioning coming. We're working on that at the moment, and maybe slightly broadening some of the conversation, but without losing what it is to be the show. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. A little bit of additional creativity. So there we go. We really are finished this time. End of season 4. A couple of big thank yous again. A big thank you to all our listeners. The show wouldn't be the show without you. We get to do great things, and we love doing this show. So thank you for your time and your attention. And we would love to hear from you. So please do engage with us, whether it's just on the email that Ez will tell us about in a sec, whether it's on the Substack, whatever it is, come get engaged. And again, to our guests who are the lifeblood of the show, bring so much spirit and inspiration. And we couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much to you.
If you would like to discuss any of the issues on this week's show and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're on LinkedIn and on Substack, so we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to connect on DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to our behind-the-scenes team, our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louie, our marketing expert Kishore, our producer Marshall, and of course to all our guests and all our listeners. See you in another reality next season.